Hi, everybody. So this is the first of 4 repeated sessions for Inspiring Inclusion. So it's International Women's Day this week. It's on Friday officially, but obviously to try and cram everything in into one day isn't always practical, and it doesn't always allow everybody access with their diaries and commitments. So we're spreading it out. Our agenda today, we've got loads to go through. We're going to talk about the importance of inclusion, what it is, the different level of privileges that many of us have, or all of us have. We'll talk about intersectionality. We're going to touch on biases. We're going to touch on the importance of inclusive language and being proactive. So a couple of years ago, one of the International Women's Day themes was choose to challenge. So this is where we were challenging people's behaviors or challenging people's thought processes or perspectives. This year, it is about inspiring, influencing and inspiring. If we don't inspire, if we don't try and get people involved in a positive way, we will just stop the narrative, we'll stop the conversations, we'll stop the discussions, which is not what we want. Ultimately, what we're looking to do when it comes to International Women's Day is imagine a gender equal world, a world free from bias, stereotypes, discrimination, a world that's diverse, equitable and inclusive. A world where difference is valued and celebrated. So together we can forge women's equality, and collectively we can all inspire inclusion. So we're trying to bring people into a conversation. We're trying to bring people into changing perspectives or having a different opinion or be willing to have different types of conversations. And this needs action every day. I appreciate that many of us in the call or on the call are probably already invested in that. So we need to work out what we can do to inspire others to get involved in the conversation. Okay. Just want you to just have a bit of a reflection and a reflective question, and just think about, what does inspiring inclusion mean to you? So just pop it in the chat box. I'll give you a little bit of time just to think about it. But what does that look like in reality? So if I'm saying to you, we need to go and we need to inspire people to be inclusive, we need to inspire inclusion, we need to get people involved. What does that look like in either your working world, and it could be the wider organization, it could be the floor you sit on, it could be with a particular team, or it could be something at home. It might be you're involved in community sports, as an example. It can be in any type of scenario. But what does inspiring inclusion look like to you? What does it mean to you? How would that sort of manifest or be demonstrated in our sort of day-to-day lives? So if you want to just pop it in the chat or take yourselves off mute, I will say that as well, whatever's easiest. I know some people won't be particularly fond of typing. So however best you want to sort of get that across more than anything.
I'll come off mute. I think for myself, it's about making it a safe space, so that if people do want, literally, people should just be able to be themselves, and we shouldn't create spaces where people feel difficult and awkward because of difference.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely. It is about that. We will talk about psychological safety as part of that safe space. We will talk about, we use the phrase, do you feel like you can dance, which I will explain later on in the session. But absolutely, it is, in my opinion, she's obviously shared by yourself, is about people feeling happy, content, comfortable, safe to be able to be themselves in whatever environment they're in, and know that they as themselves, they're not going to get held back, they're not going to get judged, they're not going to get treated differently or unfairly, I should say. Okay. What else have we come through? We've got ensure that people understand there are no barriers, absolutely, to being included. Allow more women into the industry, and ensuring men are able to accept a woman's perspective and opinion, which is a really, really important part of that, Lauren. You're absolutely right. There are two elements to all of this sort of inclusion work. Is one, for us to move into an industry where it is male dominated, but actually a lot of the power is held by those sort of your typical, I've been on various different calls and sessions where is that sort of white straight male, that's who is in charge. So unless they are willing to mold their views and be more open and potentially change their perspective, I'm talking broad brushstroke generalizations, I'm not saying this is every white straight male that's ever lived, by the way, but we have to allow, the doors have to be not necessarily open for us because we can bash through a door, but what we have to do is we get bashed through a door and then we're still listened to. Creating a comfortable, safe environment where I'm at ease, showing others it's okay to be me. Absolutely. And there are loads of different tangents we can go off about self-confidence, about imposter syndrome, etc., etc. But ultimately, and mental health as well, we both male and female, we need to, the more comfortable we are to be ourselves, and this, we're talking about International Women's Day here, but this is talking, we think about, gender identities, etc. Actually, it's about being comfortable being yourself and being accepted. And if you can be truly accepted and comfortable being yourself, then actually there are no barriers to progression and to you being the best that you can be. Creating a safe space, welcoming women to be involved, recognizing their contribution and positively promoting women being part of the conversation. Absolutely. Brilliant, everybody. So we understand and we know what inspiring inclusion is. So now we need to talk about, well, what can we do to do it? Now, inclusion, in terms of in the dictionary, is the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized, such as those who have physical or mental disabilities and members of other minority groups. Okay. Now, why do we need it? There are loads of benefits to inclusive workplaces, ranging from motivation, retention, profit as well. So there's a whole myriad of different benefits from a more sort of softer side or a more intangible side to, money in people's pockets, as it were. It allows us to develop as individuals and organizations. We learn more, we take on more knowledge, we have different ideas, we are exposed to different perspectives. So because of all of that, we have a different viewpoint, we have a more well-rounded viewpoint. Positive attitudes and behaviors, which is really, really important. It influences positive attitudes and behaviors. We become more balanced and varied. So it isn't all the same people with all the same ideas, with all the same experiences. With that difference, it allows us to, I'll use a sport analogy that, if we're playing rugby, you wouldn't play rugby with 15 props. So the big, strong ones at the front of the scrum. We have a mixture of different people because we need the different skill sets, we need the different body shapes, we need the different, strength versus speed versus technical ability, etc. And that's no different at work. We need to have that balance. And actually, if we look around a lot of our teams, bar us generally, it isn't balanced. So we aren't ever going to be able to extract the best ideas, the most creativity, the high performing teams, because we don't have that balanced perspective and that balanced view. And everyone feels safe, seen and heard, which is this psychological safety. To put that into a bit of an image, so this is a Liz and Molly image, which is a really, really good one. It is about being safe. So we've mentioned safe a couple of times. Ideas that people share when they do not belong, and ideas people share when they do. And I think it's a really, really powerful view, actually, of the importance of having inclusion. And for me, that there is no better representation than that image on the screen, actually, because why would anybody feel safe? It's like speaking up. You see it with children. Oh, I don't want to put my hand up because I don't want to feel stupid, or I don't want to be the person. And actually, that's where we lose out. And because someone doesn't feel psychologically safe, you wouldn't necessarily describe it to a 5-year-old as that, but because someone doesn't feel psychologically safe, people won't share, we won't get the best out of people. And ultimately, for many different reasons, again, both intangible and tangible, qualitative and quantitative reasons, we want to get the best out of the people that we work alongside. And some of that is, a bit more mercenary, for want of a better word. It is so we have better results, better performance, better financials. But actually, most of us, it's about, we want everybody to enjoy coming to work, and we want everybody to give us their best because they're, they feel happy and safe at work. Okay, so that is, like I say, that representation, the image that represents inspiring inclusion, why it's important. Now, when should we do it? Okay, and our view is all the time. So it's in our daily environment. It is within our senior teams. It is during recruitment. It is when we're making decisions. It is during meetings and discussions, and it's within our policies and management. So actually, you know, within that, when we're looking to pull together a plan of how we inspire inclusion, actually, it needs to be embedded within everything we do. So we have the policies and our sort of management culture, as it were, and practices. But actually, we just live and breathe it. You know, it is, if you look down that list of 6 bullet points, there isn't another point, bar perhaps, you know, actually, when we're talking about when we're socializing at work. So, you know, if we've got a canteen, let's say, or, you know, if you've got a cigarette shelter, and some people go and use that. Apart from that being explicitly mentioned, but arguably that's within our daily work environment, we're talking about inspiring inclusion everywhere. Okay. Now, what I want you to think, so this is over to you lot now. What I want you to think about is, and again, pop it in the chat, what are the risks when we don't inspire inclusion? Okay. So what are the risks when we don't inspire inclusion? And again, you can take yourself off mute or pop it in the chat, and we'll go through what people's views are. So what are the risks when we don't inspire inclusion? Here we go. Brilliant. We have isolation and a lack of belonging. People will leave the organization. We have a narrowed view or a one-sided view, and we can generate a very monotonous workforce with very little variety, and variety is the spice of life. Yeah, and actually that phrase, Lauren, is brilliant. Variety is the spice of life, because it really does apply when we're talking about inclusion, particularly when we're talking about sort of different groups of people, because, you know, the risks are when we don't include people, absolutely, we're not balanced. Absolutely, we can stagnate because we have that monotonous workforce. We have one voice, one tone, one message, one idea set. We're less likely to be to grow and develop and positively grow. If you think about, you know, just as individuals, our view of the world when we were 13, 14, 15, our view of the world when we were, you know, so teenagers are what we viewed as the world and what our perspective and opinion were, you know, early 20s, early 30s, etc. And our view of the world changes depending upon our experiences. And that is the same when it comes to inclusion and work. Absolutely. We've got a few more here. So we've got, we won't attract new talent. Good people get lost in the shadows. So businesses become less creative and mundane, and we fail or struggle to bring in new talent, and people won't feel valued or respected. Absolutely. It is not a good place. It is not a good position for us to be in when it comes to work in our working world and that sort of culture that we have at work, if we aren't encouraging everybody to be the best that they can be. And inherently, if we're not inspiring inclusion, we are not encouraging everybody to be the best that they can be. Okay. So again, over to you. And this might take slightly more thought process. Oh, hang on. We've still got, we will stop offering ideas and suggestions. People will start to think, what's the point? Absolutely. If I've got what I think is a great idea, but I'm not being listened to because I'm a bit different. Okay. Well, what's the point? I'll either leave or I'll just shut up. So you're absolutely right. People will get lost in the shadows, as Natalie said. People will start thinking, what's the point? People will, you know, just leave. Okay. And people will be isolated and won't have that. And we'll have that lack of belonging. Okay. So what skills do we need as individuals to inspire inclusion? What skills do we need as individuals to inspire inclusion? We've got belief, we've got skills to listen here. So yeah, that active listening, those active listening skills that we've got resilience, we've got bravery, so courage to do something different, encourage quieter voices and have an empathetic view. Absolutely. Empathy, resilience, listening, active listening, bravery, being factual as well. So being able to, if we're trying to change perspectives, it's always useful to move away from opinion and down to fact. Okay, now that might be fact from a statistical perspective, or that might be fact from this is my experience. Okay, accountability. Okay, making people or holding individuals, holding organizations, holding departments accountable for behaviors, for processes, for data. All right, we have to be intentional, so we have to want to do it, we have to be deliberately doing it. Okay, and then we have to be lifelong learners and willing to continue to, continuing to learn, continue to want to learn, continue to want to develop. All right, so there's loads of stuff that we can do there. Joanne's point about encouraging quieter voices, absolutely. Just because someone isn't, the loudest in a meeting or around a table or just generally, doesn't mean that they don't have fantastic views and ideas. It might just be actually they don't feel comfortable sharing for whatever reason. All right, so part of our skills and what we need to do when it comes to inspiring inclusion is being aware of the people that we work with, okay, and being aware, not taking everybody at face value, because it's only really when we go, get under the surface, do we appreciate why someone might be potentially a bit quieter, to take that example, why someone might approach work in that particular manner. You know, someone always has to leave on Friday at, early in the winter. Well, actually, that person is Jewish, so they need to be home before the Sabbath. Okay. Someone refuses to do shift work on a Sunday. Okay. Well, actually, that person, is a devout Christian. So that's a holy day. So that's the day of prayer. All of these little things which we don't know about an individual unless we have these conversations and we inspire inclusion. But actually, we can make assumptions and judgments on people without having the full picture. Okay, so it's really worth thinking about who we are working alongside, and spending time recognizing, acknowledging who they are, what's important to them, what value do they represent, their family they've got, their all of this type of stuff that's important to them. We are talking about International Women's Day, so we are talking about women specifically. So common challenges women have faced in construction. Okay, now, no doubt you will have come across many, if not all of these. Oh, I have to apologise. That's how I've converted my slide. So that says banter, that one. Flexible working. So banter we've got. I'm only having it. It's only a joke. I'm only having a laugh. Okay, well, it's not funny. But, unfortunately, people think that saying I was only joking is a bit of a get out of jail free card. And we will talk further on about what we can do in those situations. Flexible working or lack thereof. Equitable pay. Okay. Assumptions, preconceptions, misconceptions. A woman won't want to go out on a forklift because they won't want to get cold and wet. Okay, well, that's an assumption. It's a misconception. It's a preconception. I'll quite happily do that. All right. PPE and workwear. Now, this one is getting a lot better, I will say, but there's still a lot of organisations. I hate that phrase. What banter, Lauren? I know it's a nightmare, isn't it? I presume that's what you put. Yeah, I know it's hideous. PPE and workwear. So it is getting better, but there is still a big gap in the market. It's getting filled that, you have to end up wearing a small men's piece of kit, and actually it doesn't fit properly. Women's health. So the menopause is probably the biggest thing that we're talking about at the minute when it comes to women's health, brilliantly. But most organisations, and I know, Ibstock particularly have done work on this. It was never a thing. We never discussed it. You can never talk about, women's problems. I mean, if it's a problem, it's just health. It's just a reality. But it isn't factored, isn't spoken about. Is getting more and more prevalent because of some fantastic campaigning people have done. But at the same time, it's still a thing. We still have to feel or embarrassed or uncomfortable talking about something which is, just so just part and parcel of life. Okay, for the vast majority of us. The boys' club, the golf days, shall we go and watch the football? All of these networking things, and which helps, work out who's getting the next job or who is being, put forward for something else or an opportunity, or, who's being suggested to another organisation through networking. Okay. And it's through that boys' club of network, which unfortunately we don't always have access to. And then feedback. So statistically, women get less constructive and actionable feedback than men. So we're in a position where we might do a task, or there might be an element of our role where we do need to improve, and that's just the reality. And that's not gender driven, that's just the reality. The feedback that we receive to help us get better and help us sort of navigate that development will never be as good. So it will be vague, it will be emotive, it will be opinion as opposed to structured fact. Okay. So we have to deal with all of this stuff in an industry where there are a lot of people that just don't get it and don't realize why it's important to inspire inclusion. Why? Because they've never needed to be. We've never had to inspire inclusion for them because they are the industry. Okay, so it's just there's no point inspiring inclusion for when the industry is made for the group of people that we're trying to communicate to. So most people won't ever understand it in the industry because they don't need to. Say most won't understand it, most won't have an active experience of it. There are some fantastic people in this industry who do understand it, who do get it, who are willing to invest to try and make changes. All right, and the more people we get like that, the more we will be able to then change the face of the organization, okay, and the industry, excuse me. So has anyone got any questions so far? All right, bro. So we're going to talk about raising awareness, and this is about we have to start raising awareness. We have to think about impact versus intent, privilege, language we use, biases, microaggressions. We have to think about being proactive. Do you feel like you can dance, which we're gonna go through now? All right. So the first thing we need to think about is being aware of our differences. All right. And I'm going to be, there's a lot to talk about in here, but I'm going to be brief given the time constraints that we've got. But ultimately, inclusion is about recognizing our differences and accepting them. We do not want, so when people say, I don't see color, I don't see gender. Okay, well, we need you to, because people are treated differently because of their gender. People are treated differently because of their ethnicity and the color of their skin. So if we're all of a sudden we're saying we're blind to that, well, actually, then we're blind to the challenges and the barriers that someone might have faced. So it's really, really important that we become and we make a shift. So for a long time, we've been encouraged to, treat everybody the same. But actually, what we need to do is accept that everybody needs to be treated differently. But the most important thing is that everybody is treated fairly. And that's what we need to get the balance of. So, I might need to be treated differently because on a Thursday, I have to be able to pick up my child from school. There is no one that I can call on a Thursday. I can get the school run sorted all of the other days of the week, except on a Thursday. So on a Thursday, I need to leave at 3 o'clock, but I can log back on and make up my hours, or I'll do a long day. I have to be treated differently because of that. But if I'm being treated fairly, I don't finish early and get paid for a 40-hour contract and only do 35 hours. I'm doing my 40 hours. I'm just doing them slightly differently. So it's still fair. So what we have to do is get this balance of it is okay to treat people differently as long as we're treating people fairly. Okay. And that is a bit of a mindset shift, because for a long, long time, it's been about treat people the same, treat people the same. I don't see any difference. No, I treat everyone the same. Okay. Well, if you treat everyone the same, someone will fail because someone needs slightly different treatment to somebody else. We all need slightly different treatment to everybody else in reality. But what we do is we box people based on sort of minority groups or characteristics, usually as per the Equality Act. So we group people together because of that. All right. We use this slide a lot. Okay. And this is about the difference between equality, equity, and reality. And this is where we start to talk about privilege. So equality is we treat people the same. So everybody gets a box. So that left-hand side, you can see we've treated everybody the same. However, not everybody can see over the wall, which is why treating everybody the same doesn't work. What we have to do is treat people differently, but fairly. So equity is where we look to see what does that individual need? And, the individual on the right-hand side needs 2 boxes versus the individual in the middle who only needs 1. There's no issue with that, because actually it's only fair that everybody sees over the wall. So if I need to make sure everyone sees over the wall, some people are going to need more boxes to be able to do that. The reality is Some people have more boxes than others. So some people are born with more boxes. Some people inherit more boxes. Some people lose boxes over time, as well as sort of we navigate our careers. It doesn't really matter. You get to a certain point where it doesn't matter whether someone's got a degree or not, but at some point it will have mattered. Okay, so we have to start treating people differently. We also have to acknowledge the boxes that we have. Okay, so just some facts on on women. Really, that's what we're here for. Okay, 50% of women have faced gender discrimination at work. Black women are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. Women from an ethnic minority make up 12% of the population of England and Wales. However, they make up 20% of the prison population. And British citizens from an ethnic minority have to send 60% more job applications to get a positive response from employers than those who are white. All right. Now, those facts there, particularly the lower three, as it were, so we're removing that 50% of women who face gender discrimination. There is nothing within those statistics that where an individual is predisposed, is genetically more likely to die in childbirth. They're genetically more likely to break the law, genetically more likely to put forward a rubbish CV. So there's other things at play when it comes to those statistics, and actually it is about privilege. Okay, if we think about this wheel of power and privilege where we sit, so the closer you get into the center where that power word is, the more we can tick, the more you can tick off as individuals of those, the closer circle, the more privilege you have. Okay, so are we a citizen? Are we white? Have we got a post-secondary education? Are we able-bodied? Are we heterosexual? Are we neurotypical? Are we robust from a mental health perspective? Are we slim from a body size perspective? Do we have house security? Okay, so do we own our property? Do we have wealth? Is our first language English? Are we a cisgendered man? So are we male, and were we born a male, or so we haven't transitioned? And they are the most powerful. I say they because I don't sit with it. I'm not a cisgender man, so I can't say I can't say I sit within all of that wheel. There is a lot when it comes to where we sit, and certain situations will have more privilege than others. All right, now there's a whole other session we can talk about privilege, but in order to inspire inclusion, okay, as individuals, we have to accept that where we are privileged and where we aren't privileged, okay, and what situations they may be in. Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, it is really powerful. It's quite easy way to sort of appreciate, oh, actually, I can see what, in certain circumstances I do have privilege, in certain circumstances I don't. So, I know that I'm relatively privileged. I had a exceptionally solid upbringing from a family perspective. So my family life was steady. We had money. We weren't wealthy, but we had money to do stuff. We never had that financial insecurity. So we always knew that we would have, it never even occurred to me that people might think about how they were going to be fed, or where, that they couldn't have the heating on for a week because they didn't have the money to do that. So we just have to accept that. And I don't feel bad for the privilege that I have, but I acknowledge the fact that I've been very fortunate because I didn't earn any of that. I was born into it. Most of us don't have a huge amount of control about the boxes that we've got, but what we need to start thinking about is how we can pass on those boxes, which is part of our inspiring inclusion. Okay, so biases are completely normal. We all have them. It's our brain's way of processing information. Okay, it's a preference that we have over one thing or another, and its function is to protect us. So when you drive it right back and read about it from a sort of neuroscience perspective, it comes back to fight or flight. I'm going to stay with people or stay in the pack that I look like, that looks like me, that I feel an affinity to, because otherwise, think about hunter-gatherer times, think about, survival of the fittest. I'm not going to sit, me as a human, I'm not going to, go and try and affiliate into a pack of wolves. Why? Because they're going to savage me. Okay, so that is where our biases come from. Now, we don't need to have that level of extremeness when it comes to our bias, but our brain is there, biases are there to make fast decisions. However, sometimes our fast decisions that our brain is making, the shortcuts that it's making for us, give us a different perspective on someone. So we don't take into account different boxes because we've never had to think about it before, because it's not an experience that we've thought about. So to give you a real life example, I was delivering a session and there was a young man. He was about 17, having an interview, or what transpired was an interview with a senior colleague, and he'd come in for an interview for an apprenticeship, and the apprenticeship was to work on site, so he'd be in full PPE. And this young man had come in and he was dressed head to toe in a Nike tracksuit with matching trainers. And the reason I say it transpired it was an interview is because at the time I didn't understand why he was in there dressed in a tracksuit. But my bias in my head was like, oh, he's not here for an interview. Why is he here? He's not dressed appropriately for an interview, because I'd been raised middle-class household. My parents were teachers, knew what you were supposed to wear to an interview. You were supposed to wear smart clothes. You were supposed to wear your best clothes. And that was my bias. That was my fast decision. As I had a conversation with the interviewer afterwards, and he said, oh, yeah, I didn't know what to make of it initially, because he'd come in wearing a tracksuit. And I thought, well, he's coming in for interview. But then I thought, well, one, he's going to be wearing PPE. And two, well, we'll give him a chance. He's here now. It transpired that at the end of the interview, this lad said to him, oh, I was really nervous. I didn't know what to wear. But I remember you said to me on the phone, wear your best clothes. So that's what he did. Now, if that interviewer had fallen into the trap of that bias, so he was busy, or he'd already seen someone that he wanted to give the job to, he wouldn't have had that conversation. He wouldn't have allowed himself to be able to break down that bias. Now, that bias wasn't malicious. That bias wasn't deliberate. That was just a fast decision, because so many of us are trained, and our bias is based on our experiences, to think a certain way, because our brain has to speed things up. Now, that lad, he got on the apprenticeship scheme, and as far as I'm aware, last time I checked in, he was doing really, really well. And it's not about giving him a chance, because he didn't need a chance. What he needed was us not to judge, actually. Okay, and judgment essentially is our biases. So we have to think about our biases. How do we challenge them? Be aware of the biases that we have. We become aware of them by acknowledging the privilege that we have. We make considered decisions. So we don't just, oh, I've got a really good feeling about that person. If you've got a really good feeling about that person, the chances are they're the same as you, or you feel an affinity to them. Okay, so park that, make a considered decision, a weighted decision, a measured decision, a calculated decision. Monitor your and your team's behaviors, jokes, structures, who's doing what, okay? Who's emptying the dishwasher? Who's always organizing the meetings? If it's a collection for someone leaving, who's doing that? I mean, the chances are it's a woman, okay? Pay attention to biases linked to protected characteristics. So that's the Equality Act. So you can Google the Equality Act and understand what those protected characteristics are. Widen your social circle, set ground rules for behavior. Okay, so it might be, going back to the dishwasher, we take it in turns as a rota. Avoid making assumptions and relying on gut instincts. Okay. Quickly on microaggressions. So microaggressions, and this is where we need to think about so we can inspire inclusion. Brief and commonplace daily verbal and behavioral and environmental indignities, intentional and unintentional. It is comments, it is assumptions, it is behaviors that aren't necessarily, most of the time aren't deliberate, but might make someone feel different, okay, or misunderstood or judged. And as you add up these microaggressions throughout the course of a day or a week or a month, it can allow someone or make someone feel not picked on necessarily. It can make them feel picked on, but that isn't always the overriding feeling. But just, yeah, not included. Okay, so examples of them: being interrupted frequently, give tasks which fall into a caregiver role, even though it's not part of your role. So note taking or making the drinks, being called names or described based on gender stereotypes. So bossy, are you on the period? Is it the time of the month? All right. It might be, if someone is mixed race, or is a non-white, is from a non-white race or ethnicity, or certainly non-white British, where are you from? No, where are you really from? All right, all of these little things that make someone feel different. Okay, so we need to think about them and what can we do about them. Now we're going to talk about what we can do about these remarks going forward now, okay, because it's really, really important. First thing we need to think about is the impact of our comment or conversation starter or point of reference or sentence versus the intent of it. Now, if our intent is good, but we have a negative impact, that's on us to own that. All right, because that does happen, that will happen. We will invariably make mistakes. Okay. If our intent is good, but our impact is negative, we need to think about what has happened and why. So we need to reflect. So a key element of inspiring inclusion is reflection. We need to make sure we are understanding the actions and behaviors we exhibit. We need to manage the impacts that we have and why is it happening. If we're always getting the same impact, should we keep saying the same thing? All right. If there's always an eye roll, or if there's always a tut, or actually we can see, and it might be as an independent observer. So it might not be us saying it, but we are acknowledging, or we're just keeping an eye on what is happening, and we're looking around the room and appreciating, oh, hold on a second. I don't think that person is fully comfortable with what has just occurred. What we need to think about is how can we feed back to somebody? How can we ask questions? How can we have our difficult conversation, and how can we help someone so they learn that what they think is okay to say actually is making someone feel uncomfortable? Are we aware of how or who we're communicating with? What do we know about them? What do we know about our tone? What do we know about, are we educated enough? Are we making assumptions? Are we, looking at various different tropes or generalizations or stereotypes? So we need to adjust and resolve our intent and impact, so people always know that our intention is good. If we have a negative impact, we apologize. We understand why it was, why we had that negative impact, and we look not to do it again. Part of that is this psychological safety. Okay. Just going to quickly give a couple of examples, just conscious of time. So this is where we're looking at impact versus intent. So our intention is good. Oh, you don't usually look that nice. So the intention is a compliment. However, the impact is negative. We offer unsolicited advice or assistance, intending to be supportive. Is it supportive though, or actually does someone feel, what's the word I'm looking for? All right.
Undermined.
That's
undermined.
That's the exact word I was looking for, Anthony. Thank you. Yes, undermined, belittled. Yeah, actually, that's another good one. You say to a black coworker, you might know them, they're black too. It's like when someone says, "Oh yeah, I'm from, I live in London. Oh, do you know the Queen?" Yeah, there's all of this this type of stuff. They've overstepped a boundary. Absolutely, Lauren. Absolutely. So we need to think about, the intent was complimentary, but the impact was making someone feel uncomfortable. The intent is good, but the impact is perceived as controlling, judgmental, belittling, overstepping a boundary. You intended to make conversation or be helpful, but your impact is discriminatory, is perceived as discriminatory. Okay. So we need to think about that now. I'm just going to swizz through these because you will get these slides about our proactive, how to be proactive. All right. So we make reasonable adjustments. We rethink onboarding and recruitment. We share opportunities around not just those who ask, so those quiet people we've referenced, time and territory of meetings and interviews. If you have got somebody who is, on as a flexible working contract or works part-time hours, do not have a whole team meeting on the day that they are not working. Even if you've always had it on that day, move it. Okay, because if you don't, you're not being inclusive. All right. We're going to talk about allyships, role models, embracing being uncomfortable, women-only spaces, etc. So inclusive language is about being aware of how our language can affect or impact others. And we need to think about our inclusive language, because it's really, really important. So if we talk about the LGBTQ plus community, or certainly, you know, well, yeah, absolutely, LGBTQ plus community. If you talk about, you know, husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, the chances are someone in the LGBTQ plus community, you won't be being inclusive to them. So actually, we use the word partner. So if you say, "Oh, do you have a husband?" I'm going to say, "No, I don't have a husband." End of conversation. And now all of a sudden, it's like, well, have I lied then? Should I have said? Actually, if someone has said, "Do you have a partner?" Well, that's inclusive for everybody, and it's a really simple change. Okay, you know, on forms, you know, mother, father, parent, guardian. You know, so if you are um if you have caring responsibility for your niece or nephew, well, you can't fill in the mother or the father box or the parent box, but you could the guardian box or the responsible adult box. So small things which are apps make no difference to all of us lot if we're not the ones that need it. And that's the thing with inclusive language. Inclusive language does not exist for the majority of people. Inclusive language is for the individuals who need it, who without it have nowhere to belong. And we've already referenced about belonging. If there's not a box for me to tick, if there's not a role for me to circle, if they haven't got the right pronouns for me, then I don't belong in this organization because I haven't been considered. Really, really simple. Okay. So inclusive language is about making sure that, you know, the phrases, and there are some key ones that we can look at, make sure that we are thinking about everybody. Psychological safety. Now, this is where we know we can speak or act without fear or risk of negative impact. Okay, so we can establish how mistakes or failures are handled. It's not going to be instant, so we have to give the benefit of the doubt. We have to embrace it when we need to. So we have to have something called productive conflict, which is in a safe environment, which is an unthreatening environment, but it is where we have a mature, considered debate conversation to help learn somebody else's perspective and vice versa. We learn together and we choose to challenge. Psychological safety, and I used this phrase earlier, is actually about, do you feel like you can dance? Okay. So it is about, you know, we go to a wedding, we go to a party, very easy to be invited, really easy to hand out invites to go to a party. But what it is not easy is, when I get there, do I feel like I can dance? Do I feel like I can be myself? Do I feel like I can eat the cheese but leave the pineapple off the cheese and pineapple sticks? Now, obviously, if I'm not putting back on the same platter, I'll just keep them, you know. But what we have to make sure is, whoever comes to that party, they can act in a manner where they feel comfortable. If they want to people watch, fine. Let's not go up to someone and say, "Don't be so miserable. Do you want to come and dance?" "No, I'm fine, thanks." "No, no, no. Listen, come on, stop. Come on. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do." "No, no, no, I really don't." "Yes, you do. Come on. Don't be so miserable. You're here. It's a party. We're here to dance." "No, no, no. I'm not here to dance. I'm here because it's someone's party who I like and respect, and I wanted to show my face and be here for them and attend for them. I don't want to dance." "Yes, you do." And it's that, just allow someone to be. That is psychological safety. It is allowing someone to be without fear of judgment, without fear of repercussions. Okay. We call it out. So there are numerous ways we can call stuff out. Some of it can be slightly less. These are slightly more assertive approaches. Can you repeat that? Is that supposed to be a joke? We don't tolerate that kind of a thing here. Is there someone else who can take these notes? You know, because I need Anthea's attention would be better focused on the meeting, right? There are ways and means that we can do that. Some of it is a separate conversation. Some of it is, can I just have a chat with you? Look, what you said in that meeting, it just made me feel a bit uncomfortable. I don't think it was appropriate for these reasons. All right. So some of it is challenge in front of others. So in the moment challenge. Some of it is separate conversation. Some of it is checking in with the individual who you think felt uncomfortable. And some of it is slightly more structured, slightly more disciplinary, totally inappropriate, totally offensive, totally discriminatory, totally unnecessary. Therefore, I'm going to talk to go through the various channels at work to try and manage that. Switch our perspectives. Okay, so we call it flipping it. Can you flip it? Am I when we're talking about, and I said about, I know we've got the meeting notes in there, but talking about the collection for someone leaving. I have never known it in my entire work career be a male that runs a collection. I could be very wrong, and some of you will say, well, actually, in my experience, it's always been. Maybe it has, but in mine, it hasn't. It's always been a woman leading a collection. Who would do it if it was a group full of men? Well, no one, because there'd still be someone that would all of a sudden appear, out of nowhere like a superhero that still runs it. So flip it, switch people's perspectives. Would you say that if it was a load of blokes? Why haven't you picked a bloke to do that? Okay. And that's really, really important, because what happens is when we start to do that, we start to build allyship, because we start to change perspectives and people start to realize, oh, actually, hold on a second. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. So it's someone who is underrepresented group, an advocate who stands up for someone, what's within our remit and power to advocate for others. All right. So we have to really think about that allyship and drawing people in. Now, I haven't looked at everybody on this call. I know based on some of the names that the majority of us would identify as female, which there is an element of allyship that we can apply. Absolutely. I'm going to touch on intersectionality in a minute, but actually in the main, we need to encourage and we need to think about, and we will talk about this when we do our, I'll give you the dates at the end, when we do our panel discussion. How can we encourage that allyship? How can we encourage those white straight men, which I've referenced already, to get involved and inspire inclusion? Because ultimately that's where the power lies. All right. We need role models. So if one of those, well, I don't know why I have to be the poster girl. Well, actually, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So actually being a role model, it isn't, it's not really for you as the individual, it's for the people that are going to see you. Okay. We have to embrace being uncomfortable. Okay. We need to be able to speak up and respect each other. We need to disrupt the norm and create positive change. And we're more likely to be and learn and remember when we become more self-aware if we feel uncomfortable. I have made mistakes. I have said things that I shouldn't have said. None of them have been discriminatory. None have been derogatory, but they have been sort of jokes or comments that I haven't quite landed. And the best thing that has ever happened is the feedback that I've said, actually, I'm not sure that one of the best bits of feedback I've ever had was someone said to me, oh, look, I totally understand where you're coming from on that one, and I got it, but just so you know, there were others who might not. So almost future-proofing me. Brilliant. That's helped me learn massively. All right. So being uncomfortable, having that uncomfortable feedback is really, really important. Okay. Embrace being uncomfortable, because if we don't, we won't ever learn. All right. And when we're uncomfortable, it doesn't mean we're horrible people. It doesn't mean we're all homophobic, sexist, racist. Doesn't mean that we have these, horrible thoughts. It just means that actually we need to think about changing our perspective or increasing our worldview. Women only networks are the ones that fight against that boys club. Networking is really, really important. So it's really, really important that we get access to women only networks. All right. And we can replace that. Obviously it's International Women's Day. We can replace that women only with other groups only as well. All right. Other women are our best sources who can give us valuable insight and advice. Advice and experiences from that space will be meaningful and relatable. Statistically, those in female-dominated spaces have an expected job level that is 2.5 times greater than a woman with a low centrality and a high male-dominated inner circle. So even if we feel we have strong relationships with the males that we work with, the chances are we still won't be getting opportunities and we still won't have that same level of access. Okay. However, something we need to think about is intersectionality. So we have race, we have disability, we have sexuality, we have religion, we have gender identity. All these different elements will all interact differently together. So if I show you this quote, there we go. So if I'm a black woman, I have some disadvantages because I'm a woman and some disadvantages because I'm black. But I also have some disadvantages specifically because I'm a black woman, which neither black men nor white women have to deal with. And that is intersectionality. Race, gender, and every other way to be a disadvantage interact with each other. So I know that as a white woman, I will be treated more favorably in many situations than if I were a black woman. Okay. And we have to accept that, and we have to acknowledge that. All right. So it's really, really, just because we're talking about International Women's Day and we'll talk about women, there are also subcategories or subsections and subsplits and different types of treatment of people who we all are women. We all identify as women. However, the different types of woman, i.e. in this example, black women, white women, will also be treated differently. So when we're talking about those boxes that we've got, it's really, really important for us to acknowledge intersectionality. Okay. So very conscious of time. I'm going to whiz through these last couple of slides. We have to listen and learn when it comes to being proactive. We have to make space for people. Okay. We have to be aware. Okay. So we can't know everything about everybody, but we have to step into somebody else's shoes, and we need to think differently about pay rises and salaries, about our people's experience versus longevity. Okay. Entry requirements, mentors and informal networks, exposures in meetings, and shadowing. Treat people fairly and not the same. So when men meet in a coffee shop or on the golf course, we think they're discussing business. But when women do the same, they're often labelled as ladies who lunch or ladies of leisure. A knitting circle. This perception has stopped women from investing in themselves without feeling guilty. However, when women gather, they exchange powerful ideas and support that enrich their work too, whether that is work on the outside, work is in or outside of the home, which I think is a really, really powerful sentence and really, really powerful perspective. Right. Questions from anybody? We've got a couple of minutes left for questions. Like I said, I did rush through those last few slides. You will have access. Have you seen them in the chat? Have they appeared in the chat box already?
I think they're in there, but
Yeah.
I will send them out.
Okay, fabulous, cool. There are extra notes as well if you send them as a PowerPoint, Anthea. So there are notes within them as well. Has anyone got any questions on anything that we've gone through? There is a lot to take in. There's a lot of stuff that we can do. There's a lot of stuff that you can reflect on. So I would encourage you to download or save those slides as Anthea sends them through, because it's one of those things that have sort of bombarded you with things that you can do and ideas and approaches and how we can be proactive. So I don't want you to lose that. So I encourage you to download those slides. Lauren, I just wish more men took notice of these types of seminars. I think most women behave these ways, i.e. non-discriminatory, non-biased. Absolutely, Lauren. And I have said that it's always one of those things, isn't it, that, when it comes to International Women's Day sessions, we will always get more women on them, because I think one of it is women feel, well, it's International Women's Day. It's easier to ask permission to go on these sessions when it's International Women's Day, but actually a lot of it is about other people, whether we like it or not. The reality is we as women are not in charge of society. We are not in charge of the banks, of the government, of the healthcare, of the financial system, of the legal system, of the education system. We're not. Generally, en masse, white straight males are in charge of everything, of construction as an industry. It's the second biggest industry in the UK. So we need men to absolutely get involved and have a better understanding, and more men, I will say, because some men are fantastic already, get involved, because without that, change won't happen. There is, what we can do is we can lead people, we can help change people's perspectives, we can drive a conversation, we can role model different behaviors and different approaches and become more inclusive and demonstrate that in terms of our approach to work and at home as well. But what we also need is men realizing that's the right thing to do and why. However, having said that, particularly from that intersectionality perspective, we also need to acknowledge as women that we will all be treated differently as well, based upon that wheel of privilege, where we sit on that.